Hi, it's Valentina here in my studio, getting ready to work on some vocals on Beautiful Wound. And I've been thinking a lot lately about time, how I spend my time. It's probably one of my primary focuses lately in these last few years, the quality of my time, what I'm doing with my time, who I'm spending my time with. And to that end, I've been doing lots of reading about time, from a magical perspective, from a metaphysical perspective, from a scientific perspective, from a philosophic perspective, and just looking at it from all these different angles. And one of the reasons is I want to develop a better relationship with time. I know that we all have, I would probably quantify it as a very dysfunctional relationship with time. This sense that time is this marching, unstoppable, immovable force that we're all subversive to, subjected to. And, we are born, we grow up, we age, and we wither off the vine and we die. And there's this limit that we have, and this very linearity in the way we view time, in the way we live our lives on a daily basis, making appointments, setting an alarm clock, which I don't do, thank God, but I know a lot of people do. So I wanted to develop a better relationship with time so that I don't feel that weight on my shoulders. And because of that, that's why I've been inquiring into time from all these different perspectives. Well, what's so interesting about this is as I've delved into this inquiry and looking at it from magical perspectives, philosophic perspectives, metaphysical perspectives, psychological perspectives, I've already had some breakthroughs myself. Things that have kind of jostled loose my linear relationship to time. One of the aspects is from a book called Space-Time Magick by Taylor Elwood, and he has a number of chapters, each one dedicated to a different aspect of space-time magic: art, music, divination with cards, however you can get the book and see all the contents. So one of the aspects he covers is divination with cards, and I do really like tarot cards because I find them a fabulous mirror of what's happening psychologically with me at the time when I'm looking at the cards, because they're basically just a reflection of what I see in them is a reflection of what I'm digging out of my unconscious. So one of the aspects is taking a reading for divination and looking at all the cards, and rather than looking at it, the reading from a very linear perspective of that this is the outcome that these cards are showing me, start deconstructing all the cards and reorganizing them in different groups of 3 or 2 or 4 or 6, however many cards you have in the layout is how you can break it up. And then look at each of those little pockets and divine from each of those little pictures a facet of a probability that's being shown to you or being shown to your unconscious by this layout. And as you do that, you start developing a more fractalized view of all these potentialities or probabilities rather than one linear view. So that exercise reminded me, as I was doing it the other day, of the William Burroughs work that he did when he was doing what he called cut-ups, which is taking newspaper print articles and cutting up different phrases and then rearranging them, and finding in the rearrangements other definitions of the original word assembly. And those other definitions ended up impacting him in his life and what happened in his life. Because again, the way this works, it's self-reflective. As you're looking at these cards or phrases, what it brings to mind for you is stuff that's already brewing in your unconscious mind, or your higher self, however you want to refer to that. And then the probabilities of bringing that into your life. And the more you focus on these probabilities, the more unconsciously you start creating behavior patterns that make those things come into fruition. So I was thinking about William Burroughs using this cut-up methodology and how similar that was to using card divinations and rearranging the cards in different patterns. And then it reminded me of my musical work and my acting work. And I was so struck by the synchronicity and the metaphor and the power of all these four things coming together in one place. And let me explain that, because the way I work, this is my studio, and I'm working on my CD called Dream Dance, and my artist name is Nymphya, and that's what I'm going to release the CD under. Well, in my studio here, I work on acid, and no, that's the software, okay? I work on acid, and acid is great for working with loops, where you can buy loops from Sony or Prime Loops. Prime Loops and Sony are the main two places I buy my loops from. Sony's got some great loops that are licensed for use, for reuse, and so you don't, once you buy them, you're good to go. So the way I construct my pieces is I start most often with some sort of loop that grabs me. It could be a rhythmic loop, or it could be some sort of combination of rhythm and harmony, something like that. But then what I do is I start slicing and dicing the loops, and I'll rearrange them, I will pitch shift them, reverse them, and start assembling almost a collage that's built on these loops. Now, there's nothing that I think represents time as well in our world than music, because music is just organized time. And when you're working in a studio, you're working on a timeline, and you're laying things on the timeline. Well, so here I am laying loops on the timeline that are meant to be like you just lay them out and they run for so long and then transition maybe to another loop. But what I end up doing a lot is slicing, dicing, and rearranging. That reminded me of the William Burroughs thing, and making a collage of these words that originally came in a certain order, but now he's slicing and dicing them, and what new possibilities are there, what new potentials are there. So I was really deeply moved and struck by that. And the other aspect is in my acting work. I'm working with an acting teacher named Nancy Burwood from First Take in San Francisco, and she is so brilliant in her process of moving the artists away from what she calls results acting. And I would liken results acting to living in linear time all the time, to be always worried about what time is it, I got to manage this moment, I got to get there at this time. When you're in that space, your creativity goes because you're all in your frontal lobe analytical mind, and it doesn't leave space for the inspiration to drop in. In the acting work, the whole process is you're not thinking about what the character is supposed to sound like. You're not thinking about how you're looking as the character, or what is your body doing in space. You're not thinking of any of these things, because you ask yourself, okay, why are they saying this line? What's going on here? And then you pose multiple possibilities for that why. And in the posing of those multiple possibilities, I realized that's the same idea going all the way back to the card divination of, rather than one divination and here's what it's going to be, you break it out into all these different parts, and you start looking at all the potentialities inherent in that card layout. That's what we're also doing in our scene prep. We're looking at what are the possibilities for this scene. It could mean this, it could mean this, the relationships could be going like this, or like that, or like this, or like that. And in so doing, you break yourself out of being a results actor, which is not interesting and ends up actually being kind of bad acting. When you do the scene finally, after you've done all this prep work, you are living in the potential realities that you've created in your mind. And then you're just being present and responding in that moment. And then you've created something that is actually beyond what you could have created if you were thinking results the whole time. So all of these things, the way they've come together with my inquiry, have been so powerful for me to connect all these dots. And finally, one last thought on this is I've been reading a book called The Amazons, which is about the archaeological evidence for Amazon female warriors. Now, I relate to the Amazon archetype a lot, so that's why I'm reading this, because I've always had a very strong feeling that it was not just mythology. Well, it turns out it wasn't just mythology, and it also turns out that this archaeological evidence is showing that these female warrior tribes were sourced from right around the Black Sea, which is where my peeps come from, because I'm mostly Eastern European. So that was like, wow! But the whole point in telling you the story is that I realized, sorry, I'm getting over a cold. I realized that the Greek perspective, because this book talks about that, which has that women were generally subservient to the males, and they stayed at home, they took care of the children, kind of the classic 1950s Donna Reed perspective and archetype that we had here in the United States. That was Greek, and this archaeological evidence is starting to shatter that a little bit. I realized while I was reading that we adopted that Greek archetype, and so like the democracy and so much of our Western system is rooted in the brilliance of the Greeks. Well, they weren't brilliant about everything, but they were brilliant about a lot of stuff. So then I realized, oh, if we've adopted that, no wonder we're also all under this heavy burden of the Greek concept of chronos, time. Just this behemoth that marches forward in a linear fashion, and you are just at its subjection. And now with quantum physics and multi-universe potentialities that we're starting to uncover in our evolution of the consciousness in physics and science, that also is a little chink in that armor. And I was kind of connecting that dot too, going, you know what? I bet you that's why we all have this chronos time thing. It's sourced from way back in the Western civilization cradle of the Greeks. So that's a big, big group mind to tackle, but that's what I'm working on, and I'm loving so much how all these different parts of my life are all intersecting in this inquiry. So I just wanted to let you all know about that, and maybe a little food for thought, and I will let you know any further thoughts I have, as well as keep you informed on my music. So happy 2016. It's January. Sirius doesn't arrive until February 1st. I was listening to someone else saying that when Aries begins is really the new year, and then there's the Celtic Wiccan New Year was last November 1st. So however you celebrate your new year, Happy New Year.